so glad that my first guest back in the studio is Sunny Hostin,
Yeah.
author, attorney, 3-time Emmy Award winner,
Yes.
and co-host, of course, of The View since 2016, because she knows the struggle is real to like read cards at real time,
Yes.
have like actual conversations, and then tame your hair, and then have jokes. I hope you have some jokes, because I don't know, I might be a little rusty. So Sunny's new book, it's right here, may I? This is Summer in Sag Harbor, on Sag Harbor. And Sunny's new book, Summer on Sag Harbor, is a follow-up to her bestseller, Summer on the Bluffs. Same characters, new place, right?
Yes.
And she is an amazing multi-talent, so welcome, Sunny.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'm
It's good to be here.
gonna hug it. This feels like home to me, because this book is set, obviously, in peaceful and sort of small Sag Harbor, a real place, and many people don't know and associate it with the Hamptons.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
But it is. It's right there in the Hamptons, and it's a much quieter, more low-key spot. Not as much obnoxious, right?
It's small and it's on a private beach. I've been summering there for 20 years, probably. And it was first introduced to me by Barbara Smith, B. Smith, who used to own all the restaurants. She had a house right on the beach and invited me out, and I fell in love. Like it's been designated now a historically Black beach community, and that's an actual, historic landmark designation. And the community worked really hard to get that designation, and it's really important to the community because I don't think a lot of people know about this. I don't think they know it exists. They will know now because of the book, but I definitely got the blessings of the elders in the community to just tell people about the history, about the fact that Black folks were only allowed to buy in certain areas in this country, especially beachfront, and Sag Harbor was one of those areas, and they started a group of investors with Black lawyers and doctors and teachers and nurses. Then they bought this stretch of land in the late 40s, early 50s, and basically built a community, and they were welcomed. And I think that's a really cool story.
It is, and important to note that even though the Hamptons, as it's known, is a wealthy enclave, what you just described is that this was a place for regular folks.
Well, I will say that they were wealthy folks. That's the one thing. You had to have money to be able to buy there. So I think that's why it was a group of doctors and a group of lawyers. So it was really founded by the Black elite. And I think a lot of people don't know that either, that there is a Black elite. There's a Black elite that has been summering on Martha's Vineyard since the late 1800s. Highland Beach, which is where the next book is in Maryland. And Frederick Douglass had his summer home there. So it's a world of history that I don't think people know about, which is why I wanted to write to it and write
I'm
about
sure
it.
they don't, and it makes me wonder. You say you got the blessing of the elders, which is a unique community, and that's amazing because too many people in this country don't consider the viewpoint of our wise and older folks.
Well, I do a lot of research for my books because they are historical fiction, and I thought it was really important to get their blessing because I'm sort of an outsider because I've only been going there for 20 years. They settled this place a long time ago, and Mr. Pickens, his name's Bill Pickens, a real person, died recently, but I made sure that I had his blessing because he was the unofficial mayor of Sag Harbor, and you kind of had to have his blessing to hang out there even, and he was just a wonderful historian. Whose great-grandfather was one of the first Black students at Yale. So he had this wealth of knowledge, and I actually read him the first chapter of the book, and he gave me his blessings. And he said, well, you're telling a lot of people about our little place. And I said, yeah, I think we should share it. And he agreed.
That's interesting. I was wondering, why they would agree to. Obviously, you've done it, great justice and with respect. But it's sort of like people don't want you to know.
They don't want you to know, and that's why I always ask permission. I mean, even for Martha's Vineyard, it became such a phenom, and I was surprised. People started visiting that had never visited before. And they printed out the book cover on T-shirts and started going all around to the places that I write about in the book. But it was a welcome thing because I had asked the elders, I had asked the store owners, and they were like, bring it on. And one of the store owners actually, C'est La Vie, he owns C'est La Vie, he's an incredible man, and he said his sales went up like 100%. Because people were not only buying the book, they were buying all these things in his little shop.
Which is great. So
Yeah.
look at you. You've just been empowering the small business shop small, right?
Yeah.
You know, I also, as a person who spent a lot of my life in that area on the Shinnecock Indian Reservation,
yes.
had a good time recognizing some of the places and names that you wrote as fiction,
Yes.
but some, you know, I recognize. And I wonder if you've had the experience in these 20 years, and this is like the elephant in the room, you're out there,
Yeah.
everyone is well off, most people are not of color, so
Yeah.
there's a safe space
Yeah.
in what you've written, and which is real, right? And then when you step out of that as a woman of color,
Yeah.
what has that experience been like for you?
It's definitely different. And it is a safe space, and I've raised my kids going out there, and it's their happy place, or one of their happy places as well. But when you leave that safe haven, you notice it right away. But it gives me great pleasure that that exists, that there is this sort of safe place. Joy Behar does not live far from this community, and I always visit her when I'm there. And she said, well, let me visit you. And our place is right on the beach. So I said, come on and visit. She was like, I didn't even know this existed. And I said, yeah, you didn't. And she's like, this is a beautiful beach. I should have bought here.
You're like, but you can't.
Well, the interesting thing is, I write about this in the book, there is gentrification going on now. And I think a lot of it is welcome, and some of it isn't, because some of it is predatory. You know, in the sense that if someone wants to just buy a home like Joy because she loves the community, she is welcome. But what we're seeing happening in Sag Harbor is that you have these big corporate conglomerate backers that are buying up properties from families that are having some trouble paying for their property taxes, or having some trouble paying for the mortgage down the line, you know, in their families. And that saddens me, because that is true gentrification, and perhaps these homes are now being sold to people that don't understand how special this community is when they become a part of it. And that's disappointing. And I write about that because that's a very real phenomenon. I was told that Sag Harbor initially was 100% Black ownership in this area, and now it's about 60-40. That's a very big change.
That is a huge change, and I can assure you they won't care about it.
Yes.
Which is
Unfortunately.
a terrible thing, and to be expected. Do you observe that the folks, when they step out, as you've mentioned, you know, it is different. You use the word different.
Yeah.
Do you experience, you know, racism in the broader community there as a woman of color who can afford to be there?
I have, no question, I have. I think for me, certainly it's different because I'm a public-facing person, so I'm pretty recognizable everywhere I go.
Got to watch themselves.
So people are a little more careful, as I have seen that dynamic change as I've become more recognizable, right? But initially, 20 years ago, I wasn't on The View, and I certainly noticed a bit of a difference. Like, what is she doing here? That kind of thing.
I'm glad that you've staked out your space, because you know it's people like you who help, I think, foster change that needs to happen.
I'm hopeful, yeah.
Now, I recently read, and I was like slightly late to the game. I think it came out in 2021, and I don't know if you all talked about it on the show. It was really fascinating. Toni Morrison's Recitative.
Oh, yes.
And if for those who are watching who don't know, it's the only short story, that Toni Morrison ever wrote in her many, many years of being a successful and amazing writer. But what she did there was she played with language and ideas about stereotypes and racism, and you're never told in the story whether there's two main characters, two girls, one is white and one is black, but you don't know which is which. And it's really fascinating to read that and try to explore one's own biases, even if you are, whether you're a person of color, whether you're like me who passes as white but is not actually white, whose mother was brown and American Indian, my dad's white. And so I noticed you do some of this play with
do.
words in your writing, and I kind of wonder if, if it's a way that it makes people feel comfortable no matter where they're from, or if it's like this kind of code switching is something that you put in there for certain people to appreciate.
The latter. I put in the code switching because I, like you, am mixed race. My mother's family is primarily from Spain, so they're European, and my father's African American. And so growing up, I got the "what are you?" question often. And I've even had people say, just say you're Latina, it's so much easier. Or just say you're Hispanic, it's so much easier. And so I love Tony's work. I'm certainly not as talented a writer, but I do play with those themes because I think it's important to meet out those biases that we have within ourselves that I think the majority of people don't realize they have. Like, I don't think this country is a fundamentally racist country. That's just my belief. I don't think you go to people and you say, "Are you a racist?" and they raise their hands, right? I've never met anyone that has done that, but I think people have implicit bias that they don't even realize they have. And I like to toy with that.
So yeah, and when we talk about code switching, I have found in my life that happens in my own use of language, not just as a writer, but in my interactions with people. And you have to be a kind of a chameleon.
You do.
And I think it's really interesting, and I noticed it in myself that I speak differently when I'm around certain communities, communities of color. I do recognize that I'm doing it, but it's like been to the White House, covered the White House, been as a guest, but and so it's not just a ethnic or racial code switching. I feel like it's when you have this mixed ethnicity and you may appear one way or another, it's actually much bigger than that.
It is much bigger than that. It's about who are you? What is your identity? How do you identify? And no one can really tell you, or should really tell you, how to identify. You get to determine that for yourself. And I think especially with women, right? We're told how to be so much, or what you should be, what you should look like, how much should you weigh, this entire thing. And I wanted to explore those issues in the book because this book is really about Olivia's journey. And it's a love letter to my readers, really, because a lot of my readers felt that Olivia got the short end of the stick. And I got questions like, is it because she's the darkest skinned sister? And I was like, no, but maybe I should explore that because she was written to in a way that she didn't understand herself. And she definitely underappreciated her value. And so I think as women, sometimes we do that, right? We don't talk about what we really need. We don't talk about what we want, our desires, what we deserve. And so this book is about her journey into finding out herself, about herself. And I also wanted to explore the notion of therapy because it's so stigmatized in the Black community. I don't know if people realize that, but there's a stigma. Taraji P. Henson, I've spoken to her a lot about a lot of the work she's doing to destigmatize it. And so I wanted to insert that in the book after speaking with her, actually. And so I have Olivia going to see a therapist and just trying to normalize it because it's been hard the last couple of years in this country, and I think women are suffering. Children certainly are suffering, but women are suffering and they need help.
I absolutely appreciate everyone go to get a therapist.
Yeah.
Right now, stop watching. It's been a really rough go for a lot of people in so many ways, and women especially who have always had the traditional burden of being the caregiver, the nurturer.
Everything.
And if you're working, Sheryl Sandberg, there was a pivot on the lean in, and you can't really do everything and not give self-care.
Yes, that's so important.
You won't make it. So let's get into the characters a little bit, if we will. I did an interesting thing. I didn't have the hardback, which I'd love to have if you have an extra.
Yes.
Because it didn't come in time. But I got the audiobook. So it was a very different experience.
Yeah.
Hearing the language I'm a very visual learner and observer normally.
Yes.
So I'm not that podcast person, though I desperately try, but I just like don't retain it. So it made me have to pay attention to the language a lot more closely, as well as the way you describe your characters.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about Olivia or you, but if I was engaged to Anderson, I wouldn't make it. This is Olivia's fiance. He is an annoying guy.
A lot of our guys are annoying,
Oh,
though,
yeah,
aren't
yeah,
they?
yeah, they are. But, you know, you've talked about marriage on The View.
Yeah.
You know, I watched a clip recently, and you talked about, you know, your marriage, and I think about my own, and you described your own marriage compared to some of your co-hosts as a hot mess.
It's hard.
And, you know,
I've been married almost 25 years. It'll be 25 years in August. And it's like, I think the first 5 were terrible. Yeah. Michelle Obama just recently said 10 of her 30 years were terrible. And that's just real talk about marriage and relationships. And I write to that. Like, Anderson is flawed. There's no question he's flawed. A lot of our partners are, but he loves her, you know? And what do you do with that when you don't feel deserving of that love? Because Olivia struggles with deserving that kind of love and attention. Plus, he's annoying, but he loves her. So do you deserve to maybe be with someone that isn't as opposite as you are? Or do you accept the love?
You accept the love, but, you know, the guy who listens to his podcast with no headphones.
My husband does that sometimes.
He could
I'm
be
like,
hot.
no.
He's hot. She writes that he's got the chiseled face
really
and the
hot.
blue eyes. He's smoking, but no amount of smoking would allow me to put up with the like dirty shoes
I know.
and the dirty feet. I'm a Virgo.
Yeah, my husband is too. No,
Just saying.
He's a tough one. He's a tough one. And he hasn't been really truthful about who he really is. And she already has trust issues.
Yeah. So you know why you have to read this.
Hasn't been quite honest about who he is.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're not gonna do a lot of spoilers, but so let's just talk a little bit about anything else you want to say about the book and inspirations for it other than your own experience.
Really, it was my own experience and also a response to my readers that said, we want to know more about this character. And so it made it kind of easy for me. I always knew the 3 places the trilogy would be set in. I knew the settings. I knew that a house, you know, for me, my home is my sanctuary. I live with like 12 chickens and 2 big Newfoundlands and you know, 2 kids and a husband and a cat. So I know that home is sanctuary for people, and I knew that a home would be another character in the book, just like it was in Summer on the Bluffs. But I didn't know that I was going to write to Olivia's journey. And I thank the readers for telling me that they felt something was missing. One of the reasons why I'm so engaged with the readers is because my book came out during the pandemic, and it was a pandemic escape read for a lot of people. And so I did a virtual book tour, and I met with book clubs, like 50 of them. And they all bought the book, they read the book, and they had really good questions. But the resounding theme was, I want to know more about Olivia. And so I was thinking during the tour, that's my next book.
So now I can't bury the lead. This might be dated by the time, but I watched the clip from yesterday from your show and your take on Tucker Carlson. And then there was Don Lemon.
I know.
And the late night hosts had a massive party.
They did. They were calling it the Monday Massacre.
It was, I mean, I have to say, it was supposed to be funny. Some of it was very funny.
Yeah.
But yesterday on The View, you said a great thing, and you said, karma doesn't lose anyone's address.
Doesn't ever. You get in this world what you put in, and you get that's what you get in return. I am a firm believer in that. I mean, I'm Catholic. I'm a faithful person, but you know you have to look at what you put out in the world when you get something like that back. Now, I think there's a false equivalency that was drawn between Tucker and Carlson because Tucker and Don rather, because the terminations happened on the same day. Tucker lied to his audience intentionally, right? And he did it for money, in my view. I worked at Fox News. I've been on air with Tucker. I don't think he believed most of what he was saying, but he did it anyway. He intentionally misled people. And in the process of that, helped in dividing this country a great deal, and also, in a sense, helped with the degradation of our democracy. And I think that's unforgivable. As a so-called journalist, Don is an actual journalist. I worked with him at CNN for many years, and our offices were directly across from each other. And so I consider him a friend. And when I'm in Sag Harbor, he has a home there, and I often visit with my 20 friends. And he allows everyone in, as does Joy. Yeah. But I can say my experience with Don was not an experience with a misogynist. Don loves his mom. He loved his sister. When his sister died, he was devastated. And he loves me. And he treats me as a friend and a sounding board. He's always respected the women that I've seen him around. So I know that he made some comments that were ageist, for sure, and were sexist, but he apologized. I've never heard Tucker Carlson apologize for anything. And Don also got training, formal training. And I wonder if we are in the world now where, I thought cancel culture had kind of gone away. And how do you get canceled from your career of 17 years after you've apologized for something and put in the work of making yourself a better person? So and this is just Sunny, I was disappointed to see that. I don't think it was deserved.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I really enjoyed Don, and nice to see him and Chris out there.
Yes.
Different situations, but it's just it's a shame that the idea of cancel culture, it's like no one is safe, and there's no second chances anymore. Some
to be clear,
don't
Tucker
deserve
should have
them.
been canceled.
Yes.
Because he destroyed our democracy, or helped destroy our democracy.
Totally agree.
And also did this whole...
Very dangerous.
He was very dangerous. He mentioned the Great Replacement Theory 400 times on his shows. And that's a very divisive concept. It's a crazy thing to kind of fearmonger in that way and tell people there won't be space for you because of these people. Yeah. And that's what he did, and never apologized for the falsehoods. Right. And he cost his employer $800 million, almost $800 million. So I don't think it's that Fox News is trying to be a better corporation. I think they made a business decision that it wasn't worth keeping him on air because it cost too much money.
Well, Rupert likes his money.
Yes,
so,
right.
And
it's just my theory.
And bye. Yeah, well, I'm sure Don will land on his feet. He's a smart guy, he's a talented journalist.
I hope so.
And I see you get a little emotional about that because I can feel it, because he's your friend. And the same in speaking about women in therapy. Yeah. And so I think there is a message here, if you need help, get help.
Absolutely.
If you need support, get support.
Or escape like I do with a wonderful beach read.
So you like the term beach read? I mean, it's about beaches. Some authors are fussy about that.
I do. It's gotten great reviews, and I'm so blessed to be able to say that. And one of the reviews compared me to Ellen Hildebrand, who is the queen of beach reads. Right. And I read all of her books. So I was like ecstatic that it's been described as an elevated beach read and an escape.
Well, and it's elevated because of Sunny and the deep research that she does, and the care that she takes with the subjects and the historical part of the writing.
It's important.
It's very important. Yeah. I mean, and now, do not go out there to Sag Harbor and ruin it for everybody. I don't care what color you are.
I think they're ready for people to visit.
It's going to be an onslaught. I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah. When is this on shelves? When is this out?
May 2nd.
May 2nd.
Yeah.
Go and pick up Sunny Hostin's new book, Summer on Sag Harbor. And you can also read her past books, her memoir, and if you want a little backstory on the characters here. But this is the new one for spring and for this summer on the beach, and I'm sure I'm going to see it a lot out there.
I hope so. I hope so.